I'm Jim Monahan. Welcome to the 2 Minute Drill podcast for another Monday. And I have a very, very fired up Chris Swendeman with me. We're talking
Steaming.
Nico Iamaleava. And we're just from
Just
here
call
on
him
in,
Nico and
we're
get
just
it.
going to
We're
say
calling him
Nico.
Nico.
I
Yeah,
can't get my head wrapped around it. At any rate, this thing has
exactly.
exploded over the past couple of days. I know you are fired up. Sir, the floor is yours.
Jim, I am absolutely disgusted with a capital D over what's transpired at the University of Tennessee. Nico had an NIL deal paying him approximately 2.2 million a year, I believe, and went into the coaches last week and said, listen, I'm not going out to practice. He stayed away from the team, requesting $4 million. This is an absolute outrage. Tennessee, give them credit. They did the right thing. Here's the door. See yourself out. Goodbye. That was the right thing. But
Was
we've
it?
spoken about, I think it was. Someone else will pay him. We're not kidding ourselves here. I believe there's a guy down in North Carolina who may be looking for a quarterback. Bill somebody.
Yeah.
Belichick.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
guy.
that guy. He may be looking for a quarterback, and he's probably knocking on Nico's door right now. Excuse me, Nico, you looking for a job? I have one for you. But we said the horse was out of the barn, and this shows why. The horse is way out of the barn and running the track because it is so bad right now. I mean, these guys 2.2 million in college, and the guy wants 4 million. Where do you get off? Like asking for that. So here's something that really will blow your mind. Brock Purdy, the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, he's been in the NFL for 3 years as a professional, Jim. His total net earnings, $2,885,000 and 346. He's made as much as this kid made in a year. He's taken his team to the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl and a Super Bowl berth. And he's made just a little more than this kid made on his NIL deal in 1 year.
Well, that's the
Tell
San
me how
Francisco
that.
49ers fault because they're obviously paying him off of his rookie deal. It's a little unfair to equate the two of them. And you know that if Purdy were in college now, he'd be making some pretty good coin.
No, I get that. But in reality, I mean, this is how much the wildfire has spread in college already. These NIL deals are insane, Jim. I mean, how do you justify letting a kid walk in and then think to dictate what he can make? And then the NIL deal that he agreed to isn't enough. And he's going to balk unless you give him more money. And on top of it, he wanted a high end sports car from a couple of reports I read. I mean, where does this stop?
Well, for years, these universities and the NCAA were making a boatload of money
Sure.
off of the efforts of these. I'll say student athlete. It's a joke. They're not
Right.
student athletes. Let's
Right.
let's get that out of the way. But making the money off of these guys, we know that. And now the pendulum has turned, and these kids are making the money. I mean, who do you go to see? Do you go to see the coach, who, by the way, is also making millions of dollars at the highest levels of the NCAA, or are you looking for a guy like Nico? Is that why you're going to these games? I mean, let's be honest here. The
You're,
players are the reason that anybody goes, no matter what the sport is.
I,
Nobody's going to a Yankee game to see what move Hal Steinbrenner might be making up in the owner's box. They're looking to see what Aaron Judge does.
there's a movie back in the 90s with James Caan. It was called The Program. And it was about, these players being treated differently and, getting all these benefits that the rest of the college students didn't. And they have James Caan, who's the head coach, at a hearing. And they said, what do you have to say for yourself and your players who are failing? And gave them a litany of things that the players were doing wrong. And he's like, he basically said, he's like, we fill the stadium every week. He was like, when was the last time somebody came here to watch a guy do a chemistry test? And it's exactly what you're
Yeah,
saying
it
is right.
is.
I mean, it still rings true all these years later. Um, you know, but I just think that the way the NIL is set up and the transfer portal, when in the pros can a pro player, and I mean, there are many who, get disgruntled because of their contracts, but when can they get up, walk out, and just change teams at a moment's notice?
They can't necessarily change teams, but they can certainly get up and walk out.
They can, but they will also be penalized for that. These players don't get penalized, more or less. They almost get rewarded by walking out and going into the portal where somebody will pay them more NIL money. I mean, that has now it's the pendulum swung all the way to the other side of the benefit being all in the players. There's got to be some kind of regulation here. Something's got to make it more fair for both sides.
There are three antitrust suits levied against the NCAA currently underway. The big one is House versus the NCAA, and he was a swimmer who was really the start of all of this. And we expect the decision to come down fairly quickly, which could involve 20 some odd $million for these schools that they're now going to have to pay out to different athletes over the course of different sports. So the schools would be paying these kids directly as opposed to the way it had been done through a third party. The other thing that's going to happen here is Title IX.
Yep.
And all you have to think about is Caitlin Clark. And I know she's obviously a professional right now, but if you
superstar,
think, just a couple of years ago, she was the face of women's college basketball.
She put women's college basketball on the map.
So shouldn't she have gotten a piece of that?
100%.
I mean, she got it as a pro, definitely. But while it was all going on,
1,000% agree. Couldn't agree more. But I mean, this is the thing. It hit, it benefited the people it benefited, and the people before are going to be disgruntled. And there are athletes, I'm sure, that are going to have a good gripe for that.
And not to get too political with this whole thing, but this Title IX thing, you got to keep an eye on this because the Trump administration a few weeks ago had said something that one women's Division I college basketball coach said that she thinks that this could put women's sports back 25 years. And I don't think that's going to go over very well.
No.
If women and again, Caitlin Clark was the poster girl, if you will, poster woman for women's college basketball, but there were more of them out there.
Right.
And you look at the games are on constantly. Women's college basketball is on. There's women's college softball on constantly all over the dial. These kids are going to want a piece of the action too.
100%. And that's the question. Where does it end? Or where does it start? That's why it's opened such a can of worms. This is just a disaster. Absolute disaster.
Well, obviously, we'll see how this plays out over the next couple of weeks. The portal opens on Wednesday. I believe it is open until April 25th. Maybe Tennessee calls the kids bluff. I don't know. But
it seems like
I think he's going to end up somewhere else.
I think he's already got suitors lined up. And I think this is part of his play. And I think if he didn't know that teams would come after him, maybe he wouldn't have gone so strong about up and leaving, spring practice. But I have a funny feeling that the way the landscape is now, he already knew there were going to be people knocking at his door.
Oh, no question. No question about it. And this is why these college teams are being run now like a professional team. Right. They all have general managers. They're talking to these advisors because they can't say the word agent with college.
Of course not.
I'm not a huge fan of the NCAA. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of gripes with them. I have watched a number of kids go through the recruiting process at various levels and Division I, II, III. I've watched it. I am not a fan of it. There's all kinds of games out there. It's coming back to bite them. They did this to themselves.
100%. And like we keep saying, we go back to the pendulum swinging the other way. Well, when the pendulum swung, it swung hard. And now, you know what? Now you're paying the piper for all the years and all that money that you guys raked in, and these players got nothing or had to get, these side deals brokered and third parties involved. Well, now the players are reaping the benefits on the other end, and this is what happens.
So before we sign off, I do want to turn attention to baseball. I have my new torpedo bat made by Little Tykes. I'm ready.
I'm sure you're going to make them very nervous when you show up to hit with that, because obviously it's such a big advantage for the Yankees. It'll be there for you too.
I've been looking at the standings. Toronto in first place in the American League East as we record this tonight. Detroit leading in the American League Central, and you have the Angels
Hmm.
in first place in the West. I don't think any of that is for real.
No.
Over in the National League, this one I think might be, and that would be your New York Mets in first place by a game over the Philadelphia Phillies. The Chicago Cubs leading the Central, and then the San Diego Padres. The Dodgers have back down to earth a little bit, but the San Diego Padres with a 13-3 record, they might be for real. Although I think in the end it's going to be the Dodgers. But other than that, I mean, the Mets, I think, are going to make a pretty strong run. But I don't expect the American League to end even remotely close like these standings are right now.
No, and one of the funny stats that I looked at, everybody talked to, and we talked about it in the preseason, getting ready for the season during spring training. The Mets, are they going to be able to hold water with their pitching? They put all the money into Soto. Are they going to be able to hold up on the pitching side of it? Well, when you look at the standings right now, there's one team in New York with the highest team ERA in Major League Baseball, and the other New York team has the lowest ERA in Major League Baseball.
I'll take
Guess
a
which
wild
is
guess.
take which is which?
Well, I would think that the team that's leading the National League East probably has pretty good pitching, and that's
Ding
a
ding
surprise.
ding 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 ding. Tell him what he's won, Johnny. 2.30 ERA for the Mets and a 5.4 ERA for the New York Yankees. Yeah. Go figure.
Well, they're going to have to hit their way through it. That's for sure. Maybe
Yeah.
one of these little tyke bats will help.
They may want to order a few of those.
Like, subscribe, follow, do all of that good stuff. And if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the thumbs up and all of that so we can keep doing this. And we know that you're
Exactly.
along with us. Swendeman, we've covered a lot tonight. And we may be back on this whole deal with Nico if the lawsuit comes through, House versus the NCAA, over the next couple of days. You have yourself a good week. We'll talk next Monday.
You got it, Jim. Catch you next week.